Mooncat Danse Macabre collection.
Here we go again.
Hey everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I have the news release from Mooncat. I have their new Danse Macabre collection. This release is available right now on the Mooncat website. This release features 8 nail polishes in a variety of finishes. The Danse Macabre collection is not limited edition. The polishes featured in today's video were gifted to me by Mooncat. This video is not sponsored, but thank you very much to the Mooncat team for gifting me these polishes. If you enjoy seeing my Mooncat swatch and reviews, don't forget to give this video a big ol' like, as well as hit subscribe if you have not yet already. And also, if you are a fan of Mooncat, I did recently post my top 12 favorite Mooncat nail polishes here on the channel. I will have that linked in the cards as well as in the description box. Make sure to give it some love. As always, in the description box, I will have links to where you can pick these polishes up, links to the brand's website and social media pages, my social media pages, and of course, timestamps are in the description box as well. And as always, all my final thoughts and feelings are for the end of the video. Let's just get into this one. First up, we have Clair de Lune, which Mooncat describes as a light purple magnetic lacquer that reveals a dusty purple mauve base when magnetized. Clair de Lune had a really nice formula. It was a little bit on the thicker side, but I did still find that it applied very smoothly and evenly. It also wasn't so thick that I thought I needed to add any thinner to the bottle. I found it to be the kind of thickness that adds opacity as opposed to difficulty in use. It was just shy of being a 1 coater on me. I ended up using 2 coats for my swatches here. I didn't find that I lost any opacity by magnetizing this polish. I think this is likely going to be a solid 2 coater on pretty much everyone. While I do think this polish overall is very pretty, I admittedly am not a huge fan of these kind of mauve-y, dusty purple shades. But you know what I am a fan of? Twilight. And you know what this polish reminded me of? Twilight. Why do you ask? Because
Clair de Lune is great.
when left to my own devices, I will 1000% always bring everything back to being a Twilight reference. Nothing in here is going to dry down textured. Removal is going to be fairly easy. The polish, however, does dry down a little bit dull, so you will in fact want some glossy top coat. This next polish is called Hell Is Other People, and Mooncat describes it as a dark wine linear holographic nail lacquer with a purple to pink shifting shimmer. Hell Is Other People had a really nice formula. Once again, not quite a 1 coater, and it was also on the thicker side, but I still found application fairly easy. I do, however, think this one was like slightly on the line of needing a little bit of nail polish thinner. I think the next time I reach for this one, I am likely going to add some thinner to my bottle. The shimmer here is really pretty. In my personal opinion, this polish feels more like a shimmer polish with linear holographic as opposed to a linear holographic with shimmer.
But it did not give what needed to be gave.
The shimmer is really strong and very glowy, and I feel like their linear holographic here was like a little bit on the more subtle side. I could very easily see it, but it wasn't like as strong and in your face as some of Mooncat's other linear hollows are. Sadly, my natural light shots are not in fact going to help us with the lack of rainbows case. It was on the cusp of raining the day I was swatching these, so unfortunately we're not getting any sunshine. This polish just reminded me a little bit of a slightly darker version to Mooncat's Freshly Bitten, plus also having holographic. Hell Is Other People does dry down a little bit flat, so once again you are in fact going to want some glossy top coat to bring life back to the polish. And because this is a shimmer based polish with linear holographic, it is going to be fairly easy to remove, a little bit messy if you choose to scrub it off. I would also strongly caution about staining. I feel like this was a very pigmented color, so you know, double up on base coat if you're concerned about staining. And now we have Heart on a Platter, and Mooncat describes this one as a deep red linear holographic shimmer lacquer. Similar to the previous polish, Heart on a Platter seems to be a shimmer first and hollow second type of polish. I could still very easily see that there was in fact linear holographic in this polish, but it wasn't as in your face as I personally had hoped. As someone who pretty frequently shits on red polishes, I will say I really enjoy the color of this polish. It's a very deep and saturated kind of jewel tone red shade. I feel like this is the color polish that I would wear if I for some reason was plotting someone else's demise. Not that I do that on a regular basis, but if I did, I feel like I would wear this polish while I was doing it. I turned on my camera's flash here to try to see if I can get some more rainbows to show up, and it didn't really work. I was able to reach full opacity for Heart on a Platter in 2 coats. Similar to the previous shade, it was a little bit on the thicker side, but the kind of thickness that adds to opacity as opposed to difficulty in use. And just like the previous shade, I also would caution against staining for this one. Definitely double up on base coat if you're really concerned about staining, but removal is not going to be overly difficult, and you will want glossy top coat for a glossy finish. This next polish up is called Requiem For A Swan, and Mooncat describes it as a black flaky lacquer filled with a translucent flaky as well as a micro holographic glitter. Requiem For A Swan had a really great formula. On that first coat, it did look a little bit sketchy, but I found it built it really nicely for me in 2 coats. I will, however, call this one a 2 to 3 coater depending on your own personal preference. I feel like I was definitely skirting the line between needing a 3rd coat and a 2nd coat, but I was really in love with how this one looked in 2. I liked that it had like a slight transparency towards the tips of my nails, so I opted to only swatch it out in 2 coats. While Mooncat does describe the flakies as being transparent, I found on the nail they look more gray than anything. I found calling these transparent flakies also really interesting because I don't think I've come across a flaky that was transparent that didn't have like a color shiftiness to it. This one does not have any color shiftiness. I don't know if that's a new flaky or if it's just being described in a way that I've never heard it described as before, but I thought to note it. The holographic glitter in here does give the polish a very subtle twinkle. 1000% though, the flakies are going to be the star of the show with this one. You will get a little bit of texture both from the holographic as well as from the flakies. I found 1 coat of top coat seemed to smooth everything out pretty nicely. I would recommend the soak off method for removal for the shade just because flakies plus glitter is going to equal a lot of scrubbing. And now we have Pearl Clutcher, which Mooncat describes as a pearlescent white shimmer lacquer with subtle shifts through shades white, light pink, light purple, and green as it's viewed from different angles. As a pearlescent polish hater, this one had me very intrigued. Formula-wise, I found Pearl Clutcher had a really great formula. You do see quite a bit of brush strokes when the polish is wet. I would say like 80, maybe 90% of the brush strokes do disappear as the polish dries down. Once the polish is dried down, I found you really have to look for the brush strokes to see them. I feel like this is both pearlescent-y as well as very frosty looking on the nail. If I didn't have the description in front of me that said there was like pink, purple, and green in this polish, I would have just said I was only seeing white and green coming in at more extreme angles. However, when I brought this one outside, I was seeing just like a hint of a very, and I mean very pale pink. I would still say that the predominant colors that you're going to see on your nails are going to be that white as well as the green. The stars are going to have to align perfectly in indirect lighting to really catch that pink and purple. In 2 coats, I felt I had the perfect amount of coverage that I personally wanted from this shade. I do think for those of you with significantly longer nails than me or more picky about visible nail line, might want to go in for a 3rd. You can see here in my natural light shots, there's just like a little bit of like frosting rippling happening on my nail. I had thought initially that the polish was reacting poorly to my top coat. I was using Sèche Vite for contacts. I just retested it again, and I think actually the issue that I had with this kind of rippling is that my base layer wasn't actually dry enough when I added my top coat. So I would recommend that when you're putting on your top coat that requires your base to still be wet when you're putting it on, make sure that your polish is way past like the fingerprint stage when you add your top coat, because mine was at like the fingerprint stage for denting and I had like a little bit of rippling. And because I was curious, I did also just test this with the Mooncat glossy top coat when the polish was still wet and I did not have any rippling, so I think the polish might react a little funny with toluene. Nothing in here is going to dry down textured. Removal is going to be super duper easy, but a bit messy due to all of these shimmer particles. And now we have the Doppelganger. The brand describes this one as a dark purple when cold to a mauve purple when warm thermal lacquer filled with a pink to purple shifting shimmer. The Doppelganger had a good but thicker formula. I generally find across the board all of Mooncat's thermals to be on the thicker side. I still was able to apply this relatively easily, but I also do think it was just on the line of should I add thinner or should I just leave it be? I'm going to call the Doppelganger a 2 to 3 coater depending on your personal preference. I found on me in 2 coats, while the cold state was definitely opaque, I found the warm state looked just like a little bit too patchy for my liking, so I only added the 3rd coat just for the warm state. I did find that the thermal properties of this polish changed relatively easily for me. My hands were ice cold because it was cold in my room, so I did have to bust out my hairdryer to get things moving along, but I did find that once I warmed up my hands, this was definitely very reactive for me. I really like the addition that the shimmer has in this polish. I feel like especially in the cold state, it has a really strong flash and I just really like how it looks. If you watch my videos with any regularity, you know I love me a contrasting shimmer, so I do wish the shimmer stood out just like a smidge more, but I acknowledge about myself that I do tend to lean very strongly towards very obnoxious nail polish colors, and I feel like this collection is not in fact that. I found the shimmer in here to be very understated. The Doppelganger does dry down pretty flat, so you will definitely want glossy top coat to bring some life back to the polish. Removal is not going to be overly difficult at all. It's basically going to remove like a cream. And now we have the Living Doll, which is described as being a sheer blush pink lacquer filled with a strong blue to violet shifting shimmer. The Living Doll had a pretty good formula for a sheer pink polish. I generally find for shades like this, you're going to want to go in for very careful application. I found after I did my first coat that I really wanted to try to float my coats on, to do minimal brush strokes and try to get like the most even surface possible. This is a very delicate type of shade, and I feel like for the sheer pink lovers of the world are really going to enjoy this one. You can see here on the third coat that I accidentally dinged my nail as I was painting it, so I'm here trying to fix that. For a shade that's on the thicker side, I did find this self-leveled really nicely. I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to be able to fix that ding, and I actually was able to fix it without having to do any extra coats. I did find that that blue to violet shimmer is on the more delicate side. It gives the polish a very cool tone look on the nail. I could very easily clearly see that there was in fact shimmer in here, but I would still put it on the delicate and kind of glowy side. I'm going to call the Living Doll a 2 to 3 coater depending on your application style and personal preference. I could see a little bit of unevenness in my overall look on my nail in 3 coats, but I often find that to be the case for these kind of sheer pink shades. Like, I am hypercritical of them because they're not really my cup of tea. But then also I do tend to find for these kind of sheer polishes, there usually is just like a little bit of unevenness depending on your brush strokes. So I do think overall this looked and applied like I would expect a sheer pink to. And once again, super easy removal. You will want glossy top coat, and I had no issues with staining. And the final polish in this collection is called the Silent Scream. Mooncat describes this as a silver magnetic nail lacquer that reveals a deep black base when magnetized. The Silent Scream also had a good but slightly thicker formula. I did still find that it applied really easily for me. You do see some brush strokes with this shade when the polish is wet. I would say once again, like 80 to 90% of the brush strokes do disappear as the polish dries down. The brush strokes, however, will only really make a big difference if you choose to wear this one unmagnetized. Once you magnetize the shade, all of that kind of silvery gray pigment just right into the center, and what you see on your nail is actually going to be a black base with a grayish silverish magnetic stripe. I found the Silent Scream magnetized super duper easily for me, both with the cat eye effect as well as the velvet effect. And for all of my velvet shots, by the way, I am using a 30-pound horseshoe style magnet for all of my velvet shots. I don't put that on camera because I'm a little scared of having it so close to my very expensive camera. Despite not being a huge fan of black bases in general, I will say that I really did like this one a lot. The Silent Scream was opaque on me in 2 coats. I did not find that by magnetizing the shade that I lost any opacity. I did not have any visible nail line with this shade. The magnetic pigment here will make removal a bit more messy if you choose to scrub this one off, but you could definitely scrub it off if you really wanted. Okie dokie, so final thought. When I saw on Mooncat's Instagram that they were describing the color story of this release as like traditional but kind of with a twist, I was just kind of like, huh? I didn't really understand what they meant by that until like I saw the polishes in person and was looking at the color story. And yeah, I do agree that the colors themselves do feel very traditional, and I feel like these are definitely colors that I don't personally gravitate super strongly towards, but it's more so the specialty finishes that I like in themselves. The colors all match up very nicely. This is a very dark and moody collection in my opinion. I do really appreciate that we have a whole variety of finishes within this release. I also really appreciate that the thermal nail polish actually had some shimmer in it. So while I would have liked the Doppelganger to have just like a smidge more shimmer, I will appreciate that there's any shimmer at all. I feel like with Mooncat's new price increases, something that I've been wanting from their thermals personally is I've been wanting more specialtiness out of the thermals besides just being like color changing. I think the biggest surprise of this release for me personally is that I feel like Mooncat tries kind of hard to kind of come across as very like grungy, alternative. I feel like we should have gotten a Halloween release. I think that's my only true complaint about this whole collection, is that I really wanted to see a Halloween release from the brand. I'm going back and forth on what I want to pick for a top pick for this release, largely because I don't feel like any of these colors are speaking super strongly to me personally. Just again, I am not a huge fan of like deep purples, mauves, of like these like pale baby pinks, or white pearlescents for that matter. I feel conflicted about picking a top pick. I will say Requiem For A Swan did surprise me. I actually really enjoyed having them on my nail, even though I personally am not a huge lover of black nail polish. gosh. So I suppose that's gonna be my top pick from this release, but I feel like if I was shopping the collection, this would be a pass for me, just based on my own personal color preferences. As far as pricing and sale information goes, the Danse Macabre collection is available right now on the Mooncat website. This release is not considered limited edition. If you want to pick up the entire collection, that is going to be priced at $119 for all 8 polishes. All of the polishes in this release are going to be priced between $16 and $18 each. And again, Mooncat polishes are in 12 ml bottles. I would love to know everyone's thoughts and feelings about this release. Before we end today's video, I want to give a very special shout out to my channel members. Shenanigans, Story fans, your names of course all on the screen right now. If you would like to sign up for that, there is a link in the description box. You can click join next to the subscribe button. But as always, that is completely optional. Just, you know, like this video, comment on the video, share it with your friends, and most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe if you have not yet already. So just thank you all for joining me for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a lovely weekend, folks, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Thankfully, the Danse Macabre, every time I say it, I feel like it sounds even worse.